One story. There was a morning when everything felt wrong. Traffic lights turned red just as you approached.
What can I
Emails
truly
piled up
control
faster than you
today?
could read them. And every message, every notification, seemed to demand a little piece of your peace. That was the day I realized, chaos isn't just noise. It's distraction. It's the constant pull to react before you reflect. To speak before you think. To live before you actually feel alive. So I made a promise to myself. 30 days of Stoicism. Not as a challenge to conquer, but as an invitation to return to something quieter inside. The first morning, I woke up and didn't reach for my phone. I sat still. I wrote one question in my journal. What can I truly control today? And for the first time in a long time, the world didn't feel against me, it just was. The traffic was the same. The emails were the same. But my reaction was different. In those early days, I learned that calm doesn't come from fixing life. It comes from fixing the way you see life. That realization became the doorway to something deeper, a wisdom that's ancient, yet alive. Before we step through that doorway together, take a moment. If this journey already speaks to you, if you've ever felt tired of being pulled by things you can't control, subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers. Because here, we don't just talk about Stoicism, we live it. Together. Every day. Now, let's begin. 2 Stoic Lesson 1. In the second week, I realized something uncomfortable. Most of my suffering came not from what happened, but from how I interpreted it. A delayed flight, a rude comment, a broken plan. These things weren't personal, yet my mind treated them like attacks. That's when I turned to Epictetus. He said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. At first, it sounded cliché, like a line printed on a coffee mug. But when I lived it, it became liberation. One afternoon, a coworker snapped at me during a meeting. My instinct screamed to defend myself. Instead, I paused. Just one breath, but it changed everything. I reminded myself, his tone belongs to him, my peace belongs to me. That single pause created space, a tiny gap where wisdom could breathe. The Stoics called this the discipline of perception, learning to see events not as good or bad, but simply as facts. A storm is just a storm. It's not out to get you. Traffic doesn't hate you. And sometimes, people aren't cruel. They're just lost in their own storms. Every time I remembered this, life softened. I stopped trying to win arguments no one was having. I stopped carrying emotions that weren't mine to carry. And slowly, the chaos that once owned me began to shrink, not because the world changed, but because I did. Calm, I learned, isn't a reward. It's a decision, one you make again and again, in the middle of the noise. 3 Stoic Lesson 2. By the third week, something inside me began to shift. I stopped waking up chasing control, and started waking up practicing presence. It wasn't about winning the day anymore, it was about being there for it. Every morning, I opened my journal and drew 2 columns. What I can control. What I can't. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But that tiny ritual became a mirror for my mind. In the first column, I wrote, my effort, my focus, my words. In the second, the weather, other people's moods, the outcome. And each time my mind wanted to argue with life, I looked back at that page, the truth staring quietly at me. You don't own the external world, you own your response to it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And that realization began to change how I worked, how I loved, even how I listened. When things didn't go my way, I reminded myself, life doesn't owe me smoothness, only the opportunity to respond with grace. When people disappointed me, I stopped wishing they were different and started wishing myself wiser. That's the hidden strength of Stoicism, not hardening the heart, but softening the ego. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about directing it, like a river, calm, powerful, and flowing exactly where it's meant to go. And once you taste that kind of control, the control of the inner world, the outer world loses its grip. For reflection. 30 days later, I didn't become a monk. I still got annoyed in traffic. I still lost my patience at times,
but in the world within.
But something subtle had changed. The storms inside me no longer lasted as long. I began to see peace not as a place you reach, but as a practice you repeat. It's not about building walls to keep chaos out. It's about building strength to stay calm within it. Because the truth is, life will always throw its noise at you: deadlines, rejections, heartbreaks, uncertainty. But every challenge is also a classroom, every setback a teacher. The Stoics never promised a painless life, only a meaningful one. And maybe that's the real reward of this journey, not perfection, but presence. To breathe when it's hard, to listen when you want to shout, to let go when holding on only hurts. If you've come this far, it means you're seeking the same thing, not escape, but clarity. So pause for a second. Ask yourself, where in my life do I need less control and more peace? And when that question echoes in your mind, don't keep it to yourself. Share it below, your experience, your struggle, your insight. Because your story might be the light someone else needs today. If this video helped you find even a moment of calm, leave a comment, give it a like, and subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers, a space where wisdom isn't ancient, it's alive. Together, we practice the art of peace, one thought, one breath, one day at a time.